Hi there, welcome to Wednesday's Devotional. My name's Lisay Kelly, and I hop on here almost every Wednesday of the year just to encourage you in the middle of the week, and just to take some time to share devotional with you. This is really a growth environment. It's a place where we can encourage one another and take the journey of faith together. So as you hop on, I'd love to hear where you're from. I'd love to hear from you what's happening in your life, even in your thoughts regarding today's devotional. I'd love to hear from you. I'm starting a new theme, and that is looking at seasons of life. Today, I want to speak about one, recognizing the season you're in, two, resting in the fact that there's a purpose, and the purpose in your season will eventually become clear. Thirdly, there's a process that allows us to get movement and growth in whatever season we're in. And finally, the thing I want to share with you today is there's beauty in every season. Now, underlying this devotional regarding the seasons of life is a scripture that most of us are familiar with, Ecclesiastes 3, verse 1, and from there. To everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. There's a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away. This is a beautiful reminder that we are constantly surrounded by change and transition times. You can try and stay in denial and ignore it, but you cannot ignore or avoid inevitable life changes. Today, I'm going to focus on one line from that passage, and that is a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. And really want to say, quite honestly, yeah, what brought me to this phrase is that, like myself, there are many parents around the States that are in a time of both embracing and preparing to refrain from embracing. There are a whole lot of us that are planning to send our kids off to college. For some of my friends, it's a couple of weeks' time, and they say goodbye to life with their child the way that they knew it. So we're embracing last moments, and at the same time, we're getting ready to refrain from embracing. So I'm putting a shout out to all my friends and myself who are going through what is really quite a huge process of change. How do we navigate these changes, especially the inevitable ones? I think it's really incredibly freeing, first of all, to recognize the season you're in and to find ways to embrace it. Sometimes those seasons are obvious, like sending a kid off to college. You know this is upon you, you know the imminence and the inevitability of it. Sometimes recognizing the season is more progressive because you don't really have a handle on what's happening. Some years ago, I went through a tremendous season of displacement. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I felt so displaced. When I looked at the landscape of my life, I was incredibly happy with what was going on. But deep inside of me, there was this sense of something not fitting, something out of whack. And so I began to pray about it, write about it, reflect on it. And this was a process really of months that only made sense to me months down the line. But as I took time to write and to reflect, I started to get a recurring image every time I sat down and wrote. And the image was of me walking with a huge tree under my arm. The tree was alive, but the tree was uprooted. And as I took time to reflect on that, I realized that I was that tree, that I was uprooted and displaced. And in order to thrive and grow in new ways, I needed to find a new place of planting. So sometimes recognizing the season takes that element of intuition, that element of imagination where you discover you're in a new place, what now and what to do. The second aspect of the seasons of change comes also from this verse in Ecclesiastes. Rest in the fact that there's a purpose to everything. There's a time for every purpose under the sun. So rest in the fact that there's a purpose for every season, and the purpose will eventually become clear. You may not be on top of things right away, but it will become clear. It's quite interesting for me when I look at this aspect of resting, how sometimes it is so contrary to our nature to rest in what we're unable to change, to rest in what is actually inevitable at times. There's a scripture from Isaiah 30, verse 15. In returning and rest, you will be saved. In quietness and confidence will be your strength, but you would not. And that's just such a reflection of our humanity. At times, if we wrestle with the fact that there's a purpose in the season, and we struggle within ourselves even to come to rest in the season. There's another passage here from Psalm 37, verse 7. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Don't fret or worry because of someone else who prospers in their way. Again, there's a sense of wrestling with what you see around you, or choosing to rest in your inner man, in what you're holding, the complexity, the not understanding everything, but you're holding this while you're navigating the seas of change. So recognize the season, rest in the fact that there's a purpose. And for those of us where we're sending kids off to college, there's a purpose both for us in remaining, and there's a purpose for those going to college. Very concrete in that context, but there are many contexts that are not that concrete. So we have to rest in the fact that the purpose will become clear. Now, in the few minutes left with us, I want to look at this phrase. There's a time to embrace, and there's a time to refrain from embracing. I want to suggest to you that there's a process that allows for movement and growth, both in embracing and refraining from embracing. I want to encourage you that these elements in the process can help you navigate your way to a place of acceptance, of joy, of discovering the beauty in your season. A time to embrace. Embrace means accepting or supporting. It may be embracing or supporting a belief, a change, or a theory. Willingly and enthusiastically. You think of embracing a friend, embracing a newborn. There's so much joy in that. So in part and parcel of the embracing, I want to suggest there are four elements to this process of embracing. The first is to receive. When you receive something, you're given something, perhaps you're presented with an award or a check, a scholarship, whether or not you like it, you've received something. When I think of that moment when I received my newborn, right, that newborn moment where my daughter was placed on my chest and all my world coalesced within my arms and life was forever changed. There's a receiving that moves us immediately into the next element of embracing, and that is accepting. You can accept the newborn. You have to accept a new job and respond. You have to accept the offer on a house, and immediately in this place of acceptance, there's so much information to assimilate, and you realize straight away so much imminent change is upon you. So, this time of acceptance is, of course, by itself, in and of itself, a process. I remember bringing my newborn home in a snowstorm and waking up at 4 o'clock that first morning and realizing everything about my day-to-day life had completely and forever changed. And it's the same with a new job. It's the same in a new relationship, a new home. So the element of receiving, there's the element of accepting, and then there's the element of learning. In the time to embrace, part and parcel is an element of learning. And I was reminded of this last week. Sometimes you learn of a new health diagnosis, or there's a loss that has come upon you that you have no power over. And suddenly you're learning to navigate a whole new landscape in your life. Last week, I had the pleasure of sitting with a woman in her 90s who just recently has come to know the Lord. Can you imagine in your 90s coming to a place of faith? But she's in a place of learning both a way of faith, but a way of life that is filled with pain. And all these elements are upon her in her late stage of life, receiving, accepting, and learning what is put upon you. And I was reminded, first of all, it's such a sharp, steep, accelerated learning curve. At the same time, there's just this cascade of receiving, accepting, learning, and either resisting or embracing this place of pain, this place of just something that is beyond your reach, unless you're able to reach for it with faith that there is a purpose, with faith that there is a God, and that God would provide the way through, navigate you through these very tough times. In all these phases of change, we have to learn to embrace. It doesn't always come naturally. The fourth element of embracing, a time to embrace, is an element I'd like to suggest to you. It is a time to be hospitable. Now, usually we think of hospitality in terms of creating a space, an atmosphere, and an environment that is welcoming to guests, either for dinner or for a time to stay. Hospitality is an attitude where we learn to create space for people in our lives as friends instead of enemies. And just like we can resist change or we can embrace it, hospitality, which is part and parcel of this, either we choose to be hospitable to change, or we choose to be hostile to the change, resistant to the changes upon us. And I'd love to put this question to you. What if some of the changes, unasked for, unsought perhaps, what if these changes come bearing hidden gifts with them? These changes of sending young adults off to start a life, these changes for us left where we're navigating new ways for ourselves. What if these changes bear hidden gifts? And as we learn to be hospitable to these changes, we can create space as we open to new ways of life. We open up, and I know it may be a new thought, to open up your way of life to being hospitable to the change that is upon you. I want to encourage you with this. This process is driven by choices we make, by decisions we make to embrace or to refrain from embracing, by embracing or resisting, by being hospitable or being hostile. And as you come on and check in with this, guys, I'd encourage you to really set your center on embracing rather than fighting, because we can wound ourselves in fighting what is upon us. We can we can stagnate our growth by refusing to embrace. So uh, we need to recognize the season that we're in. We need to be able to rest in the hope that there's a purpose in every season. And then there's this time for embracing. And finally, a time to refrain from embracing. The word refrain means to stop from doing something you used to do. Again, the newborn comes to mind. For those of us who've had children, you can't simply embrace your baby as a newborn. You have to let the baby grow, and the expressions of affection and parenting change over time. A time to refrain from embracing also speaks of withholding affection the way that it used to be. It's a process. And in this process, there are elements that I want to suggest to you. First is the element of release. Release speaks of being set free from restraint, confinement, or servitude. And I'd want to, for a moment, again speak to parents. As parents, we don't necessarily like to think of ourselves as restraining, but there comes an inevitable point where not to release your child, even from one grade to the next, from one degree of self-autonomy to the next, not to release is to hold back and restrain them. The very purpose of parenting is to help young people, children, grow up into being able to navigate life. So this is implicit as a time to release. There's a second element in this time to refrain from embracing, and that is to trust the process. I think this can be one of the biggest keys in navigating seasons and navigating change. Trust the process. I want to encourage you, trust that ultimate good will come. This becomes something that becomes your mindset, your intention, that ultimate good will come from this season. And I want to give you a line here that you can take into your intention, into your mindset. Believe the best, profess the best, and wait patiently. Believe the best for the season, for when you need to refrain from embracing. Trust the process. Believe the best, profess the best, and wait patiently. There's a little line in Isaiah 57, verse 19, where God speaks and he says, I create the fruit of the lips. In the Passion Translation, it says, I offer peace to those who are far from me, and I offer peace to those who are near, and I will heal their deepest wounds. So I want to encourage you, if you're in this space and place of needing to refrain from embracing because of a fractured relationship, because of a change of tempo in season, that God is present with you in it. And God will bring healing to the deepest wounds. And this is an amazing passage because God says here, I offer peace even to those who are far from me. And you may be feeling far from God, but God is not far from you. And he's offering to heal the deepest of wounds. So the elements in refraining from embracing: release and trust. Trust is a big one. The third element is to unlearn old ways of embracing, old ways of relating, unlearn the old ways of being in order to make room for the new. We can be so busy holding on to the old ways that we don't make room for the new. And we get stuck kind of in a no man's land, a transition time that seems never ending because we're so busy holding on to the new. Remember, I mentioned my season of displacement. It was only months later that I realized I couldn't accept that change was all about me. I was seeing and feeling it in intuitively, but I was fighting it circumstantially in my concrete circumstances in life. Unlearning is so essential if we're going to make movement and grow in the new season. Part of unlearning that I want to encourage you in is to do something for yourself every single day, something that you enjoy. Part of unlearning, being able to make this room to let go of the old ways of being, to embrace the new, is to make at least 15 minutes a day just for you. Take time to do something you enjoy. Underlying this is the practice of being kind to yourself, not in a narcissistic way, but in a way that frees you to embrace what may initially be uncomfortable, may be terrifying because it's new terrain for you. So make at least 15 minutes a day to be kind to yourself in new ways. So these elements to refrain from embracing is to release, to trust the process, trust that the best will come, unlearn the old ways, and then finally, the fourth element is to practice serenity. Serenity is the state of being calm, peaceful, and untroubled. It's actually quite a big thing to begin to absorb into your life. And I find practicing serenity actually may begin with the declaration of intention. I am calm. I am at peace. I am untroubled. And you take that as your declaration into every day. So you speak it and your mind begins to hear it and believe it and make room for you to grow in it. So finally, when we go back to this passage, there's a time for everything under the sun, a time to cast away, a time to gather, a time to embrace, a time to refrain. The writer of Ecclesiastes goes on to say, He, God, has made everything beautiful in its time. He has put eternity in our hearts. And he goes on to say, I know that there is nothing better for them, for humanity, to rejoice, to do good in their lives, and enjoy what God has given you. So I want to say in closing, as we're navigating these seasons, these changes, these processes, is to discover the beauty in life, discover the beauty in every season, and enjoy what is before you. Sometimes we're so busy surviving or navigating that we don't always take time just to enjoy the beauty. Hi, Grace. So nice to have you on here. I want to close with two thoughts here. One is we here on Long Island are in the season of the monarch. The monarch butterfly is getting ready for its migration across to California and to Mexico. I'm going to post a photo of the monarch. Its orange wings are laced with black lines and bordered with white dots. They literally will travel 3,000 miles in the migration season to get to a warmer place for the winter. During its migration, each butterfly relies on a huge volume of food that it's eaten in order to navigate or make the journey. What I learned as I was looking at this, because right now we're seeing monarchs all over, so I was reminded the monarch is a symbol of transformation. But the monarch navigates its flight of 100 miles at a time by being fueled from what it ate while it was a caterpillar. I just want to say this again, and I want to share a thought with you. The monarch can go for 100 miles by what it ate when it was a caterpillar. And I want to say this to you. You're on a journey of transformation that will be successful because the seasons before, the seasons leading up to the season have prepared you and fueled you for what is to come. Your journey of transformation will be successful without even knowing it. You've been prepared for this time. You've been in training. Believe the best, profess the best, and wait patiently for it to come. I know I've gone on a little longer, but I want to close just with reminding you of the prayer of serenity that was written by Reinhold Niebuhr. The full prayer of serenity. I'm going to close by reading this. I look forward to hearing comments from you and encouraging you and praying for you along the way. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen. I encourage you on your journey. Look forward to hearing from you. And thanks for staying and checking in today on Wednesday's devotional.